People who escaped countries that were supposed to be impossible. We all know Berlin Wall escapes, right, buddy? Tunnels dug in silence, families hidden in car trunks, people moving slow, careful, terrified. One mistake and it's over. That's the version history usually gives you. But what if I told you that's not the case at all? Let me explain. Because in April 1963, a 19-year-old East German civilian looked at one of the most fortified borders on Earth and decided to hit it with a stolen Soviet armored vehicle. Full speed. Not sneak under it, not climb over it, drive through it. His name was Wolfgang Engels, and he didn't escape the Berlin Wall. He ran it over. Engels was actually born in Dusseldorf in what became West Germany. So technically, he started on the free side, but his mother was a hardcore communist, moved the family to East Germany after the war, and never looked back. And yeah, insult to injury, she worked for the Stasi. Engels only found that out later. After everything, when he escaped, she publicly disowned him. Every letter he sent got handed to secret police. Every phone call ended with a click. So yeah, buddy, the guy smashing through the wall had his own mother feeding him to it. But now, your favorite buddy will fix a myth. People picture the Berlin Wall like a giant concrete fortress from day one. But in 1963, it was still early. One layer of cinder blocks, under 10 feet high. No full death strip yet. But what it lacked in structure, it made up for in people. Floodlights, guard towers, barbed wire everywhere, and shoot-to-kill orders. And that night, April 17th, multiple people tried to escape across Berlin. Most failed quietly. Engels did the opposite. He wasn't some rebel leader, not even a soldier, just a 19-year-old mechanic and driver working near the East German army. He'd literally helped build the wall earlier, so yeah, buddy, he didn't just escape it. He went back for something he helped to create. So what did he do? Chaos. Straight chaos. First, timing. It was right before May Day, which in East Germany meant huge military parades. Tanks, vehicles, equipment everywhere. Streets full of army movement. So one more armored vehicle rolling around? Totally normal. Police literally stopped traffic to let him pass. The system meant to stop him. Gave him a green light. And he didn't just randomly grab the vehicle. Days before, he befriended army drivers, let them use his car, and learned exactly how the BTR-152 worked. Then waited for lunch break and stole one. A Soviet BTR-152 armored personnel carrier. Not technically a tank, but, buddy, 6 wheels, about 9 tons, military steel, open top hatch. So after this, someone had to explain how a teenager used Soviet equipment to smash their own border. Good luck with that conversation. Engels drives through East Berlin, crosses the river, lines up with the wall. Guards are just standing there, and suddenly an armored vehicle is coming at them from their own side. No protocol for that, just confusion. He had about 100 meters to build speed. But before the final run, he stops, gets out, locks the rear hatch, and yells to people nearby, "I'm going to the west. Anyone coming?" Nobody moves. So yeah, he gets back in and floors it. Impact. Concrete cracks. Blocks break. The wall gives, but not enough. The vehicle slows, and then gets stuck in anti-vehicle barbed wire on the western side. Now he's trapped. Not east, not west, right in the kill zone. He got out of the armored vehicle, and he also got caught in the barbed wire. Guards open fire, he's hit twice. 1 bullet collapses his lung. So yeah, at this point, story should be over. But nope, because on the other side, a West Berlin policeman sees everything. No orders, no backup, just instinct. He starts firing at the East German guards. One guy, that buys seconds, and then a group of people from a nearby bar, slightly drunk themselves, run out, form a human chain, pull Engels out of the wire, and drag him inside. Close the blinds. He comes to on top of the bar, looks around, sees shelves of Western liquor he's never seen before. And he knows he made it. First thing he says, "Give me a cognac." They say, "No, buddy, you're bleeding out. Alcohol thins blood." So instead, ambulance. He survives. 3 weeks in a hospital. And now imagine East Germany's problem. A Soviet armored vehicle stuck halfway through their own wall. Bullet holes, engine running. People coming to look at it like a tourist attraction. This is where he did it. There is no propaganda spin for that. Engels lived a quiet life after. No fame chase, no revolution speech. Just a guy who made one insane decision at 19 and got away with it. He lived long enough to see the wall fall in 1989. The same wall he drove into eventually fell on its own. And his mother? He saw her again in 1990, 27 years later. 27 years where she had publicly disowned him, reported him, put him on a blacklist with formal charges, theft, desertion, damage to state property. You'd expect some kind of a reckoning, right? An explanation, anything. Nope. She was happy enough to see me, Engels said, but we didn't talk about what happened. That's it. He died in 2014, outlived the entire system that tried to stop him. So yeah, the Berlin Wall was strong, but not 19-year-old with a 9-ton vehicle strong. We all think escaping a country means fake passports, secret tunnels, movie-level drama. Right, buddy? But what if I told you one of the craziest escapes ever was just a teenager, a rope, and the landing gear of a plane? Let me explain. Since 1947, over 100 people have tried hiding in aircraft wheel wells. Survival rate? About 25%. So yeah, 3 out of 4 don't make it. Statistically, this story shouldn't exist. But on June 4th, 1969, a 17-year-old Cuban named Armando Socarrás Ramirez pulled it off. No seat, no oxygen. 8 hours at 30,000 feet, and he lived. He wasn't escaping from the outside. His father worked inside the Palace of the Revolution and knew Fidel Castro. His brother was Che Guevara's bodyguard. This was a family inside the system. And still, Armando wanted out. Why? Control, hair, thoughts, life path. He was being sent to military service, then to cut sugarcane. His friends were getting arrested one by one. At 17, he made a decision. There was no future there. He had to leave. So he came up with a plan, or at least something that technically qualified as one. Him and his friend Jorge Perez Blanco had been watching the airport for months. They knew the Iberia Flight 904, the only direct run from Havana to Madrid. Once a week, taxied to the far end of the 11,500-foot runway, turned around, stopped for a moment, and then launched at full throttle. That pause, that one moment when the plane wasn't moving. That was their window. The plan was to hide inside the wheel well, the compartment where the landing gear folds into after takeoff. It's not a cabin. It's not a cargo hold. It's a mechanical cavity built for metal, hydraulics, and giant wheels that literally crush things when they retract. No insulation, no pressurization, no heat. Most people who tried this froze, suffocated, or fell out mid-flight when the gear opened again. Gear list? Cotton for their ears, a flashlight, a rope. That was it. No suit, no oxygen, no margin for error. On the afternoon of June 3rd, they jumped the fence and hid in the tall grass just off the end of the runway, waiting, sweating. The DC-8 rolled toward them, engines deafening, jet blast flattening everything around them. Then it turned, stopped. They ran, sprinted across the runway toward the left side wheels. The tires were 42 inches tall. Jorge started climbing. Armando looked up and saw there wasn't room for both of them in that compartment. He took the other side. He ran to the right side wheels, grabbed a metal strut, twisted his body through the opening, and pulled himself into the semi-dark compartment. The plane started rolling before he was even fully inside. Massive, burning hot tires folded right into his space. He flattened himself against the overhead, pushing them away with his feet. An engineer who analyzed the case later said, surviving that moment alone was 1 in a million. Not rare. Basically, impossible. The gear locked. The doors shut. He was sealed in. At that moment, Armando had no idea what had happened to his partner Jorge, or whether he had managed to climb up. Then the real nightmare started. The plane climbed fast. In minutes, he was at Everest altitude, At cruise 30,000 feet, the temperature dropped to about minus 41 degrees Celsius, and there was only a third of normal oxygen. Imagine putting a human in a freezer colder than Antarctica, removing most of the oxygen, and leaving them there for 8 hours. That's not survival, that's shutdown. His body fought it at first, shaking, panic, confusion, then unconsciousness, then usually death. 8 hours have passed. The plane landed in Madrid. Crew opened the gear. His frozen body dropped onto the ground, clothes stiff like wood, ice forming over his nose and mouth. He barely made a sound. Thermometers couldn't even read his temperature. The captain just kept repeating, "Impossible!" They rushed him to the hospital. Severe hypothermia, severe hypoxia. It made no medical sense. And then he woke up. First thing he thought? He was back in Cuba. He started panicking. He couldn't hear anything, completely deaf. A doctor walked up and wrote 4 words on a board. "You are in Madrid." Only then did he calm down. And his first question? Where's Jorge? And here's the part that hits, buddy. No one knows. Some said Jorge got knocked down by the jet blast and was arrested. Others said he made it in and fell from the aircraft during the approach to Madrid. His body was searched for along the flight path for days. It was never found. Same plan, same night. One survived, one disappeared. That's not a lesson. That's probability being brutal. But here's the weird part. Doctors think what saved him was the cold itself. 3 things helped. The plane flew slightly lower at 29,000 feet, a tiny bit more oxygen. The wheel well had minimal heat from the tires and hydraulic lines, still freezing, just less deadly. And his body likely entered poikilothermia, basically a shutdown mode where everything slows to near zero. And on top of all that, doctors think his heart may have fully stopped, like in controlled surgery, except he was alone, in the dark, in the sky. After all this, Spain told him to leave or risk deportation. Cuba launched a full investigation. Fidel Castro personally interrogated people. A teenager in a shirt had become a state-level problem. Armando went to the US. Built a life. 22 years in business, 20 years trucking. His family back in Cuba was monitored. He never saw his parents again. Today, late 60s, Virginia, married, kids, grandkids. Volunteers as a firefighter and paramedic. Yeah, the guy who technically died at 30,000 feet now saves lives. And when asked if he'd do it again, he said yes. You can smell freedom in the air. So yeah, buddy, that plane carried 143 passengers, but only one made that trip with no seat, no oxygen, and no permission. 17 years old, 8 hours, 1 continent. Escaping is one thing, but surviving the sky itself? That's a whole different level. We all know Cold War escapes were about spies, secret tunnels, and James Bond stuff, right, buddy? But what if I told you one of the craziest escapes ever was literally a guy stealing a fighter jet mid-flight and just leaving the country in 17 minutes? Let me explain. Yeah, not sneaking, not hiding, just flying out. Because in 1953, a 21-year-old North Korean pilot named No Kum-sok took off in a MiG-15. And instead of following orders, he just turned south and landed at an enemy base in South Korea. 17 minutes. That's it. No second chances, no backup plan, just speed and a decision. Now here's why this is insane, buddy. The MiG-15 wasn't just any jet, it was the problem. American pilots were struggling against it. Faster climb, better acceleration, total nightmare in the sky. The US literally could not get one to study, and that was driving them crazy. So they launched Operation Moolah for Koreans. Flyers, radio messages, big promise. Bring us a MiG, get $100,000 and freedom. Sounds simple, right? And nothing. Total flop. In fact, MiG activity dropped after the broadcast because paranoia kicked in. Everyone got suspicious. Now here's the twist, buddy. The guy who actually did it had never even heard of the offer. Yes, No Kumsok knew nothing. He risked his life with zero clue there was money involved. That's like winning the lottery without even knowing there was a prize. And the reason is almost funny. The Americans dropped the leaflets along the Yalu River. But the actual MiG pilots were stationed in Manchuria. Wrong place. 1 million pamphlets, 0 pilots reached. Classic intelligence fail. So why did he do it? No Kumsok had been planning this for years. Since he was a kid, he didn't buy into the system. So instead of picking a career like a normal person, he picked an escape plan. He became a pilot on purpose just to create a way out. Think about that for a second, buddy. Most people plan their future. This guy planned his exit. He flew over 100 combat missions. Never shot down, never shot anyone down. Just waiting, watching, timing it. September 21st, 1953, No Kumsok was on a training flight. So midair, he turned south. He changed the route and escaped. That's it, no undo button. Here's the simple logic that makes this work. The MiG flies around 1,000 kilometers per hour. That's so fast that before North Korea could even react scramble jets or process what was happening, he was already gone. Speed beats bureaucracy every time. And he didn't just rely on speed. He flew low, under radar, hugging the ground. By the time anyone understood what was happening, he was already out. System too slow, human too fast. And then luck kicks in. American radar offline for maintenance. Buddy, this entire escape is basically duct taped together with speed and blind spots. He took off from Sunan International Airport just outside Pyongyang. In just 17 minutes, he crossed the border and landed at Gimpo International Airport in South Korea. The landing was crazy. He approaches Gimpo Air Base, enemy territory surrounded by American jets and anti-aircraft guns, and instead of landing normally, he lands the wrong direction, straight into incoming traffic, head on. Why? Because confusion equals survival. And it works. He almost collides with an American jet, rolls between parked fighters, and pilots are literally aiming guns at him. One wrong move, it's over, and then he just stops, climbs out, drops a picture of Kim Il-sung on the ground. Hands up. Buddy, imagine being those American pilots. You're just doing your job and suddenly an enemy jet parks next to you like it's a grocery store. Now, here comes the funniest part. During debriefing, they tell him about Operation Moolah. The money, the reward, the whole plan. The $100,000, by the way, worth over $1 million today. The CIA told him to decline the money and instead offered to pay for his full university education. He agreed. No cash, just a degree. But then the US paid him anyway. Both. The full $100,000 and the education. He used the money to support his mother and study mechanical engineering at the University of Delaware. Just 1 year after landing, he became a US citizen and had a new name, Kenneth Rowe. But here's the real twist behind the scenes. The plane was valuable, sure. Top pilots tested it, studied it, compared it. But the real prize? Him. They interrogated him for months, 6 hours a day. He gave them everything. Training methods, base locations, command structures, how the whole system worked. The jet was the headline. The pilot was the gold mine. The craziest part isn't the intelligence win. It's what happened after. Back in North Korea, the regime needed someone to blame. So they executed 5 people. His best friend, his commander, officers who trusted him. So yeah, buddy, escaping a country is already insane. But escaping by stealing a fighter jet, flying under radar, landing the wrong way on purpose, and accidentally winning a reward you didn't even know existed? That's not just crazy. That's main character energy at 1,000 kilometers per hour. We all know escaping a country is hard, right, buddy? But what if you were born inside the prison? Not captured, not sentenced. Born there, into it, with no idea the outside world existed. That's not an escape story. That's a different category of human experience entirely. Let me explain. His name is Shin Dong-hyuk, and on January 2nd, 2005, he became the only person ever born inside a North Korean political prison camp to escape one. This is Camp 14. a North Korean political labor camp sitting out on the rural edges of Kachan. 15,000 people are believed to be imprisoned there, forced to live and work in a bleak collection of houses, factories, fields, and mines, surrounded by an electrified fence. This isn't a regular prison. It's a total control zone. No one born in Camp 14 has ever escaped. The only sentence is life. And Shin was born there because of a system so brutal, it has its own logic. His mother and father were prisoners whose marriage, if you could call it that, was arranged by the guards as a reward for hard work. Both were imprisoned for fleeing to South Korea during the war. And he was imprisoned for being their son. So yeah, buddy, his existence was basically part of a prison incentive program, which is insane. Now here's the part that reframes everything. There was no grand political awakening, no heroic speech, no sudden discovery of freedom. Looking back, the reason he decided to escape was almost ridiculous. He heard about food. A fellow prisoner, a man named Park Yong-chul, started telling him about the world. Park wasn't just any prisoner. He had been a senior official inside the North Korean regime. Someone who traveled to China, to East Europe, someone who had lived inside the very system that created Camp 14 until the system turned on him. So now you've got this bizarre setup. One man who had seen the outside world beside a man who had seen nothing. And what pushed Shin over the edge? Broiled chicken? Barbecued pig. So yeah, not liberty, not human rights, not some big abstract dream. Chicken. When Anderson Cooper asked him if that's what freedom meant to him, Shin said yes. People can eat what they want. To him, that could be the greatest gift from God. Now, here's the escape plan, buddy. Shin had information about how the camp worked. Park had knowledge about how to escape the country once they were outside. They needed each other. On January 2nd, 2005, they were assigned to collect firewood on a mountain, one of the few areas near the electrified fence. They waited for the guards to disappear, then they ran. Running ahead of Park, Shin slipped on the ice. That slip made it possible for Park to overtake him and reach the fence first. Park hit the fence. He thrust his body between the first and second strands and was immediately electrocuted. He died instantly. And Shin, who a second earlier had been in the lead, was now watching his only guide to the outside world die on an electric fence. And then he did the only thing available to him. With Park's body trapped against the wires, Shin crawled over him and squeezed through the gap his body created. It was not some heroic, clean escape. It was desperate, brutal, and horrifying. Shin got burns on his legs where they touched the lower wire. He still has those scars. Then he ran. And here's the insult to injury. Shin later realized that if he hadn't slipped on the ice, he would have reached the fence first. He probably would have been the one who died. He survived because he fell. Now, here's what comes next. And it's almost as insane as the escape itself. Shin had no idea where he was going. Park was supposed to be the one who knew how to get to China. Now Park was dead, and Shin didn't know which way was north or where China even might be. So he improvised. He broke into a barn and found a military uniform. He stole food from houses. He sold rice at a market. Within 2 days of his escape, he had sold a bag of rice and used the money to buy cookies and cigarettes. 2 days earlier, he didn't even know what money was. There is no money in Camp 14. Buddy, imagine learning currency and black market survival in the same week. He found traders moving toward China. He followed them. He bribed destitute North Korean border guards with food and cigarettes to cross the Tumen River. Then China. But China wasn't safety. Shin lived there for months in the shadows. No documents, no language, working illegally, moving constantly. Always with one fact underneath everything: if anyone reported him, he'd be sent back. And going back meant execution. He wasn't free. He was just in a different kind of danger. And after China, he eventually made it to South Korea. Today, Shin lives outside North Korea, mostly between South Korea and the United States. And instead of hiding from what happened, buddy, he turned it into his mission. He works as a human rights activist, speaks at events around the world, and keeps telling people what life inside those prison camps was really like. So yeah, buddy, Shin Dong-hyuk didn't escape a country. He escaped a world he thought was the only world that existed. And the only reason he made it through the fence was that he slipped on ice at exactly the right moment. And the only reason he ran in the first place was roasted chicken. These countries looked impossible to escape, buddy, but again and again, one human decision broke the system. A teenager with a tank, a kid in a plane wheel, a stolen fighter jet, and a boy chasing chicken. If you liked the video, subscribe to Cozy Fact Buddy for more stories that sound completely made up, but are somehow real, buddy.